Welcome back. We're getting straight into a vengeance today, reshaping the thing. It's from Top Notch. I forgot to do it first, but usually I do the axe cut after I reshape. But I can hold it in place a little bit here. And it's looking a lot better to look at it in the shade and in the sun. And on the inside, I primed it with some black, and the outside, an ivory silk. Moving straight into the chevron. See, getting it off the sticker is painfully slow. And the other way is to rub the vinyl, but I don't like to do that because it can stretch it out and rip it. So I'm just painstakingly removing it with the blade here. Might notice I skipped over the drilling and dremeling today. I feel like I show that in too many videos, or too much of it. So after I obsess over the chevron for a little, we're going to get straight into painting for the rest of the video. So to create the chevron, I actually used my jig for a part 6, and it was a little too big, so I cut it down a little. And if you've seen my previous Vengeance video, you know there's a lot of these masks, and the chevron actually changes sizes. But I picked one that looked like moderate. And looks like it was still too big for my liking. So right here I do something kind of bold and chop it down some more. Normally you do this before you peel it off the paper, but miraculously that worked out. That looks more like what I'm looking for. So this first layer is definitely yellow ochre and gray. And I think I leaned it towards the gray for this mask, as I do with part 6's as well. And I've put a lot of wash in this first paint. So it's very wet, and I'm just kind of wiping it around and taking most of it off. I actually am using a reference for this mask, and it's the simpler Vengeance mask. The one that I said was a clean one. From the scene with the hillbilly where he hits him with the bottle. So this is looking good for our first layer. And I like to see it indoor and outdoor, as we know. So here's what it looks like in the sun. The chevron was building up quite a bit of dirt, so I think I scrubbed that off with a Q-tip later. And we check the size to a regular part 6. See, the Vengeance is quite a bit smaller. At least an inch on either side. So we're going to take that into consideration for the straps later. And as fate should have it, I do have some straps that are a little smaller that were too small for a regular 6. So on to more dirt. Now we're using an espresso color. Each layer gets darker. We're still using the same technique of pretty wet paint mixed with a wash and scrubbing it away as we progress. Trying to soak it into all the cracks and crevices that I put in the mask. Looks as if I've already done a layer of red stains, usually before I do this coat. Yeah, you can see them on there. There's a burnt sienna layer, just in certain areas where I want rust or dry blood look. So as we continue, we're going to narrow in on the eyes and make those a lot darker and drippy. But overall, I don't want this mask to get too dirty. I want it to have that part 6 look to it. Now we're filling in these cracks with a detail brush. I used to have a thinner brush, but it hasn't survived. And eventually this one will become thinner as it loses bristles. Definitely finished it off with a raw umber around the eyes. And a very wet wash to drip down the eye holes. Not much to it. Definitely added some burnt sienna over top too. That's that reddish stain you see around the vent hole. That color tends to bleed well over top of the dry paints if you add it on wet later. See that around the axe wound as well. Here's what it looks like sprayed. Used a matte clear coat, which also makes it look a lot more like my 6s. Very happy with this. Now the pop rivets and the straps. I actually don't weather these on a part 6 or on the Vengeance. I like it actually, I feel like it stands out a little more if you leave them nice and clean. And I like to get the pop rivets situated first. Make sure there's no problems with any of them, which I soon encounter as the holes in the mask are too small. Quick fix with the step bit. It's better safe than sorry with these holes, so I like to leave them small until the last moment. So you don't want them too big and have that pop rivet rattling around in there. So that makes a nice tight squeeze. Even though there'll be washers on the other side, I still like that to be tight in there as possible. This part always involves a lot of struggle, no matter what I do. And it's mainly because I could just squeeze it down and pop that rivet in there as fast as possible, but I move the mask around a lot, so I make sure that if it does pop, because you don't really know when it's going to pop, if it does, you don't want to move and jerk the tool and put a scratch in the mask. This is very important. So you see as I get to the end here, I make sure that the tool is not going to touch it because I'd rather have the mask fall onto the bench than have the tool touch the mask. So that's why all the struggle is necessary. And to finish it off, I like to foam up the pop rivets, as those can be pretty abrasive. You don't want to poke in your face or your hood or your bust. Super glue can be quite the challenge. That's why I keep a lot of tubes around. Some of them have a lot in there, and other ones only have a little bit left because sometimes I only like a small amount to come out of the tube. Pretty sure that super glue melts foam, so you don't want to use a ton. Just little droplets like this. I'm going to push that down around the rivet. And when you have a ton of glue like that, it takes at least a full minute to cure. And the crappy part about that is you need to hold it down tight the entire time, or the foam is not going to make contact as the rivet pushes it up in the center a little. But this is totally worth the effort. One more thing. The nylons and the eye holes, present in every Vengeance mask. Definitely not something to skip over. Here's where you want to have utmost control over your super glue tube. If you can't see exactly, you want to do this in a well-lit area because you want to see how much is coming out of that tube. It can run down the mask if you put too much on there. So I have some Q-tips close by just in case that happens. We've got each nylon prepared in advance. I like to blow the little particles off of them. If there's any dust on there. And then you drop it onto the glue very gently. It's important because you don't want the glue to smear. And this part is the true test because you want the nylon to make contact with the glue, but you don't want to get stuck to the glue on the outside. So you're just gently tapping it down until each little glue pile smooths out. And once that initial contact happens, there's not much you can do to change it. So you have to be very careful and get this right down to the millimeter. I like this nylon because it's not super dark. I like my nylons to be a little more subtle because I feel like the mask looks fake when they're super dark, especially when you see it in the daytime. Thank you so much for watching. Big shout out to Cody. Hope you like this mask. This mask was made special for a customer. He sent me a cool surprise, which I'm going to be working on in an upcoming video. So I decided to make him this mask and surprise and send it along with his current order. But more about that coming up. We will be back as soon as possible. I swear on my life, with more mask videos. Thanks for watching. Take it easy. Welcome aboard, new subs. Peace.